Hey everybody, Yehuda Sunshine here from Cyfluencer, the cybersecurity thought leadership platform, with another exciting casual conversation with the world's leading cybersecurity personalities. Woo! Woo! Alon, that's you.
Yes. Hi, everybody.
Welcome,
Um,
Internet. Alon, why don't you tell us why we should be so honored to see you today? Who are you?
well, first, thank you for having me, and
My
now I
pleasure.
feel like I have big shoes to fill after that intro there. Hi, everybody. My name is Alon. I have been in cybersecurity almost 20 years now. I've been a CISO three times, twice for publicly traded financial organizations, once for a small unicorn startup by the name of WeWork. Been doing this for a long time. Up until recently, I was also with a company called AppUX, exploring PKI and just providing thought leadership around that. And thank you so much for the invite to be here. Really appreciate it.
It's our honor. We're always looking to pick the brains of different cyber leaders and hear about their journeys and how people can kind of learn from this experience to be able to guide their own careers. So, with that kind of as the mantra to get started, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you started in cybersecurity.
Ah, it's a great story. Usually, I tell that over a drink or several beers. But back in 2012, I had some cybersecurity experience. I had a lot of unofficial cybersecurity experience, at least for many years before that. At the time, my background was more, I did installs. I mean, we're talking back in the year 2000. I did migrations, to Windows 2000 with IBM BIMs. Dating myself here with Bell and Howell mainframes and converting microfilm to the big laser discs for those who remember those disasters. Did a project, for example, with like the U.S. Post Office on that. Fast forward to 2011, I was in high frequency, ultra low latency market data, where we built the one of the world's largest market data feeds, normalized data from different markets to shove directly into your memory algorithm, no IP, just literally directly encoded PCI cards, literally directly into your memory buffer, just to save whatever nanoseconds we could.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined a firm, market maker on Wall Street, originally to reduce latency on their trading, but cybersecurity became one of their number one priorities. And as a result, kind of built out the cybersecurity practice there, took over what we had and evolved it and grew it. It was very educating experience and a very humbling experience. When you have $6 trillion a year going through the pipes that you're securing, and you're not just thinking about how do we make sure this stays up, but also how to make sure that somebody else doesn't not only hack our customers, but create a loophole so that they can trade and do that kind of fun stuff. And
Just minor things, no stress
yeah,
situation.
exactly.
You know,
I
beach
remember
volleyball.
we had an outage once, and somebody looked at me and said, you're incredibly calm, because I was literally sitting there whiteboarding a solution. How do we solve this as fast as possible? And everybody else is freaking out. We're losing. I think the number was about $5 or $6 million a minute were the losses that
Mm-hmm.
were anticipated. And it's like, that's great, but if we don't solve this, none of that matters. We'll just continue to lose. So shut up. Let's concentrate and do this. Forget about that for a minute. And it's a very intense, high octane environment.
So kind of diving into it, part of these casual conversations that I like to turn into is, what are the major touch points where you felt cybersecurity turned from a job to a passion and a career, something that it goes beyond just thinking in the 9 to 5, and who are the people that kind of guided you in the experience? If it's mentorship, if it's somebody that you look up to and said, they handle a pressure situation like I want to handle a pressure situation. They read the crowd and can give over relevant and contextual information in a timely fashion in a way that I want to be able to approach it. So what were those moments that kind of transitioned it, and who were the people that made the biggest impact?
You might not like my answer. I think it was for me, you know, I came into this industry as looking at it as a 9 to 5, or how do we, how do we all succeed? I think that's what we all want to do. Um, I started looking at what was going on there, and it wasn't just, how are we all being secure in our own information. It was, to me, more, how am I as a customer, or how do my customers, because when I think of my customers, I think of myself in their shoes, and how would I care and how would I act. I'll give you a great example. My daughter's healthcare information was hacked from her birth, and I look at that, and maybe it's because I'm in the industry and I'm thinking about it differently, but like, it's so easy to protect. And then you think about that as literally, why is there nobody on the other side that's saying, hey, this is super easy to protect? In the case here, the implementation was more than likely a checkbox that was already free and something they were already paying for,
Mm-hmm.
putting aside practices that probably shouldn't have happened. But even if they were happening, there was literally another step that could have been so easy, free to implement, and yet didn't happen. And I think well before this happened to my daughter, I cared, and I think I cared about what was going on in the mindsets. I speak a lot about operational technology and just in general OT utilities, critical infrastructure. When I talk about that, I'm not talking about, obviously sometimes I am, but I'm not talking about what's going on in the Ukraine. I'm talking about what could happen in my backyard. What could
Mm-hmm.
happen if I don't have power, if my
Something that's
neighbors don't
broadly
have power.
applicable in your environment and across the world.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's kind of the key to caring, at least, is putting yourself in your customers or your audience's shoes. As far as who was an influence on me, I think it was more a lack of an influence. I
Mm-hmm.
think, I looked at, there are some really great speakers, especially keynotes, and but I never really felt that it was somebody who I identified with, or somebody who I wanted to be like. And I think in that I created kind of what I wanted and what I thought would be the ideal, just from that kind of lack or missing space, if that makes sense.
Mhm. I mean, I think that that's something that our audience can appreciate, because it's nice to look up and say, this industry leader is somebody that I ascribe to be to. It's something else to say that even if I don't see that model, I can still do something and still find myself, and that's not going to be a detriment. Just because I don't see somebody doing what I want to do doesn't mean it can't be done.
Oh, on the contrary, that means that it should be done and that there's a gap there.
Yeah. So I want to ask, with that said, do you think that either one, that there should be people who are more actively giving back to fill that gap, because people, they don't see those influences, or on the other end, that should people be more self-starters and say, regardless of the situation, my end goal is to be successful, and I need to find the skill building exercises, the courses, the opportunities, even if there's not going to be somebody who's going to hold my hand.
Well, I think it's both. I think you need to, while you're creating, when there's nobody to hold your hand, there's nothing wrong with you holding somebody else's hand. So
Mhm.
while you're pulling yourself up, there's nothing wrong with you pulling somebody up with you. Um, and I'll give you an example of that. Those who know me, and those now, I was employee number 200 at WeWork. There was a lot of stuff that we were starting, that we were doing. You know, I hired over 200 people in less than a year. If you think I could find highly technical individuals at a fast rate, of that to hire, I couldn't.
Mhm.
What that meant was, as we were reinventing the wheel and finding our way of doing things, you take somebody who might not have technical experience, or might have very basic technical experience, and you teach them and you mentor them. As you're defining or creating the next thing, you're also helping other people get to where you need to be. And I think they're not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that in the cyber industry, there's this push and pull where vendors and startups don't necessarily want to invest in the individual because they're going to jump ship in a year, in 18 months, in 2 years. At the same point, the personal relationships that you form in these startups and the necessity to be able to give over those skills and that understanding and that, that industry experience, it's not limited based off of that relationship. And I know, like, I still turn to my previous bosses and previous colleagues and say, it's like, just because I don't work there doesn't mean I don't still appreciate your opinion and still need to understand that, like, my life experience and my professional experience is more limited. Tell me. That's why I'm even, I'm always asking, what's that point where you had to approach your job, security threats, and risk management differently? Because there's always something where maybe that can change how I'm thinking it. Maybe that's how our audience can kind of redefine their approach.
So let me take it. It's really hard. I just want to say it's really hard for me not to grab my soapbox right now and stand on it, because you touched on the subject that I had a roundtable with 8 CIOs and CISOs on Friday, and that exact topic came up. What you just mentioned is we were talking about retention of employees and how
Mm-hmm.
do you retain employees, and I said the exact opposite of what you're saying that companies are doing, because I think it's incredibly wrong. I think the days of, I'm going to go be a lifer at IBM, or I'm going to go, wear a white shirt or whatever the dress code at IBM is today. I think that's something that, we took the extreme of the opposite way, or extreme the other way, where the entire organization is always looking a quarter ahead. Where are we? Where are we going? What does the next quarter look like? Maybe the next 2 quarters. If you're really lucky, somebody's looking at the next year, but nobody's looking at the next 5 years, the next 10 years, even the next 15 years. I
Mm-hmm.
think, I think investing in employees is something that's missing and incredibly lacking today. But it's not just investing in the employees. It's investing in, hey, let me help you get this certification. Let me teach you a new skill. Just happen to be going back to WeWork real quick, but I had a guy who we hired who was a shoe salesman at a sports store. We hired him. I said, listen, I'm going to teach you tech because I can teach you tech. I can't teach you the customer service skills that you already have and are very good at them. And I taught him, not me, but our entire team took him under our wing, and we all taught him. And 6 months later, I said, then listen, you've been here for 6 months. You've been exposed to the entire direction. Where do you want to go? And he said, I want to be a network engineer. And I said, okay, great. Let's get you a CCNA course. And we got him a CCNA course, and we put him as a network engineer. And one of my biggest fights was not necessarily getting him the course, but after we got him the course, one of the arguments that I had to have with kind of senior executives was, why do you want to increase his compensation? Well, now he's CCNA certified. He should be making what a CCNA certified person makes.
Mm-hmm.
But we paid for that class. So I think it's not enough to just pay for the class. It's also you have to promote the person and then help build the person. Today he's somewhere else, but he's a senior network engineer and he's loving his career. And I think that just goes to show, when you take people and you mentor them and you help them and you build them, they can stay at your own organization. They'll love the organization. You just have to make sure that you can continue to be competitive and continue to take care of those employees.
I
Sorry, I'm
mean, it's
getting off my soapbox now.
no. I think it's especially something that's important to think about in the startup community, that we see that there's these, I don't want to say silly or superficial perks, but having a gym or having the ability to bring, your animal to work is a quality of life thing. But is that the same thing as telling employees, we can provide this, or we'll pay for your certification, we'll do a career development thing, we'll allocate more time and more mental space to what you're looking for, instead of deciding that this is what looks good in a job appreciation survey? Because
Right. No,
that's
no,
what I think is the
that
point that
that's
you're
and
coming
that's
to.
that's a really good point. No, absolutely. And I think people are also changing that kind of gilded cage of, oh, I have these perks, but um is that really what today you're looking for? And I think the mindset is starting to change over what people are looking for and what people want.
Mhm. I mean, I think that it's very interesting, especially you see there's an increased push for the 4-day work week, and I think although that's something that's getting traction, employers that are showing a little bit more reception are saying we need to be there for our customers. We can't shut off for 3 days a week. But what we can do is be flexible to the needs of our employees, to be able to adjust based off of their family and their time constraints. And because of that, they're going to give back. But I think that it's hard when you set these strong rules of, what's going to make us this innovative business, and not necessarily think about what's going to meet the needs of the employees as well as the customers themselves.
Correct. And I think a company that's, well, customers are more than incredibly important. Without customers, you don't have a business. Let's be honest here. Your employees are also incredibly important, and they help build the business literally from scratch often. So that I think that you have to kind of balance them, and I think that that's a huge part of it.
Mhm. So I want to kind of pick your brain and do a little case study in the lifeline of alone.
Sure.
When you were in WeWork, there's a lot of things going on. Can you tell me about your process in integrating automation and what kind of facilitated it? What was involved, and then what did you learn from this moving to the next experience? How are you going to bring that into your next
Hang on,
project?
this is another soapbox, so let me get the one that's over here now. Um,
Do you have like three or four? Like you
I
seem to be
have a
sitting
few.
down versus.
Yeah, I have a few. I can lift the desk and then we can have a standing conversation. I have. There's just a few things that I'm passionate about. I before I get into that, just from general and passion, I'm a very firm believer of, as a team leader, or as the manager, or whatever words I hate, manager, boss, all these words, but as a leader, if I'm the smartest person in a team call, if I'm the one that everybody's looking to for the answer or anything like that, there's something wrong. I think that's, and we touched about perks, but in general, when hiring, you know, I'm a firm believer of, I want to hire smarter people who know better than me to tell me what I don't know, not what I do know. I don't need people to tell me, oh yes, you're right, 100% of the time. No,
You're
that
actually
doesn't
being
help
paid for
me.
that already. Yeah.
What's that?
You're
Right.
already being paid for that. You don't need somebody else to agree with you. You need somebody else to give something constructive to the conversation.
And it's to the point where we would have, we work, this is really easy to do, but when we would have meetings with outside personnel, I used to wear a t-shirt and jeans to work every day. And it was always fun. I'd purposely show up late. I'd let my team kind of handle the call, or the meeting. I'd walk in, I'd look in the waste paper basket, see what was inside, and then, walk out. Somebody would say, hey, who's that? Oh, that's the janitor. And then I'd come in and I'd sit in the meeting another 5 minutes, and I'd just listen in, because I don't need to be, presented to, sold to. I need my team to have their finger on the pulse. If and when they need to escalate or anything like that, they'll find me. They'll find me in the middle of the night if they need to, and they're always the first call that I would take. Um, so I think that's also something that's incredibly lacking. As we're talking about just employee development and things like that, is giving your team the backbone to say no, to push back, to come up with maybe a better solution that you haven't thought of. I think that's a really important part.
Hmm.
When it comes to automation, the one of the challenges that I had is we had about 20 network engineers, and again, just wanting to hire smart people. They were very bright individuals, but they would spend half to three quarters of their day sitting there on a Cisco switch, going conf t switch port VLAN, and just switching VLANs all day on a black and white, terminal screen. And it broke my heart. I mean, more, if I forget the money that we're spending
Hmm.
to do this mundane task, these people's brains are literally rotting away, and these are really smart individuals. It made no sense to me. And what I did was I ended up finding somebody to build me a custom solution in Ansible at the time, um, to be able to do it. The solution costs probably 1 year's salary of one of them, and it would do
Hmm.
everything that they did for three quarters of the time, then and there, on its own. There was no need to do anything or anything like that. Where where I'm going with this is, there was incredible pushback from the team. Oh, you're going to get rid of us. You're going to replace us with a machine. You don't need us. I want to go to McDonald's and almost the cashiers that are now being replaced by the machines.
Mhm.
That wasn't my intent. That wasn't what happened. That wasn't what I wanted to happen. I literally wanted to tap into their brain. Again, going
Mhm.
back to, we hire these smart people. I want to free them up to go solve somewhere where I'm having a network problem and not sit there and change VLANs all day.
Take
And
away the mundane, monotonous task that doesn't require
yes,
that level of skill, and let them
yes.
use their intelligence and use what their background is to help the
And it
corporation.
was an incredibly hard selling point because they were all very scared.
Mhm.
So I think I learned that sometimes, even if you see the value in something, you still have to sometimes sell your team on it.
So playing good cop, bad cop here, we're talking about the evolving relationship of a security executive, a CISO, trying to communicate these ideas and trying to get the technical team to get buy-in, and then also being able to get the board to give you enough support that that you can go to the tech team and whatever decision you need to make, you can enforce it. So how did you change your communication style? How did you build that buy-in, and then how did you go back to the board and say, there's a level of this that is necessary, we also need to consider their needs or else we're going to have a mutiny?
Subtly put. um I think before that, I think, from a communication,
Hello,
hello?
here. Yeah, can you
Yeah,
hear
sorry
us?
about that.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So you said from
Okay.
a communication, and then
From
you
a
had a techno
communicate,
delay. Yeah.
yes, my apologies. From a communication standpoint, I think it's incredibly important to kind of treat everybody the same.
Hmm.
Um, and I literally, if you're walking into your office and you're not saying good morning to your janitor or the security guard or whatever it is, something wrong with you. And I can tell you that I've yelled at employees for that, because that's something, to me, that's incredibly important with communicating with everybody the same. I think one of the lessons out of the automation thing that I learned was, you have to communicate to everybody at the same way. So if I'm having a session with board members on, um, educating them on cybersecurity and the financials behind cybersecurity, and explaining to them kind of the back and forth, and how do you come up with the ROI, and what amount of money you should spend, and all of that fun stuff, you know, that doesn't mean that I don't talk to my team in the same respectful way, and treat them the exact same way, or anybody else for that matter. So I think that's a huge part of it. I think the communication style needs to be the same across the board.
Hmm.
And if you're somebody who communicates in a certain way, that there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're respectful and you're okay with it, that
Hmm.
that's how you present to your board, because that's who you are.
But just to make a delineation, when you say the communication style is the same, the way that your tone and your message, or the language, because I would think that when you're
All of
talking
it.
to a CFO versus the technical people, the needs and the pressure points and how they interpret that information is different. So if I'm trying to convey risk, the CFO, I'm going to have to put it in financial terms, versus the technical guy, where I'm going to have to contextualize it for what his situation is.
I would say the same, because if your technical guy doesn't understand the financial terms of why he needs something, he's not going to be able to sell it to you. So you might understand, and I'll take it a step further. Let's say IAM is on my mind today. So let's say we're talking about a new IAM solution, or we're talking about, implementing single sign-on, for example,
Mhm.
and the cost is $5. If your engineer doesn't understand how those $5 affects the company's bottom line, and how it can potentially, secure the organization, what the risk. I'm not saying they need to understand the exact number of what the risk associated with, but they need to understand how it's affecting the company, because this is what they're doing for the company. If they're doing it because it's cool, it doesn't have the same emphasis, and it's hard for them to prioritize on
So
what
who
is
is the
important for the
onus there
company.
on? Is it the CISO's responsibility to make sure that everybody understands, or is
Yes.
it HR
With
has to
with no.
hire the right people and then they get this whole process? So if this engineer doesn't understand the bottom line here, and they're technically gifted, can they not be successful on your team, or is it structurally going to be a problem in startup? Where's that line, do you think?
No. I think it lies on the CISO to explain to them why. I'll give you a different example. Let's say you want to go and you want to secure something. The risk associated with it is $100. Again, round simple numbers.
Mm-hmm.
If your engineers he's gung ho about a solution. It's an amazing solution. It's fancy. It's beautiful. It's, dare I say, sexy. You know, but it costs $150. If they don't understand why that's the wrong decision, you're failing as a CISO to explain to both sides, to your board on how you're making decisions, because they also need to understand why you're spending the number that you're spending, and B, your team needs to understand. I'm not saying that they need to look at
Mm-hmm.
at everything the company does and understand exactly, but they need to understand the core business functions of the company. When I was in training organizations as a CISO, you know, everybody on my team understood how trading works. What is the aspect of, if you think I didn't have a person on my team that didn't know what a put or a call was, they didn't know those terms, but they knew that you buy low, you sell high, or you sell high and then you buy low to cover the costs.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that they need to understand. If they don't understand the basic model of what the company does, it's a lot harder for them to secure the organization. So can they be a stellar engineer? Yes. But you still need to explain these things so that even in the back of their head, it might not be security related, but if they're a stellar engineer, they might have a great solution for something that's completely unrelated that they just thought of because they're so stellar.
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides of the coin. It's like the evolving role of the CISO, the responsibilities, the expectations that they're taking on, and then the understanding of the corporate boards and what they need to know. And they're kind of intertwined here, because the board has a basic expectation, but then the CISO is also supposed to kind of guide them through the process and be able to elevate the risk factors and to be able to give them that organization of priorities. So do you think that the CISO needs to be the responsible party in educating boards about what the priorities are, or the CISO needs to be receptive enough to what the board's priorities are to kind of pitch it in that tone? Which is it, the chicken or the egg?
I think it's both, to be honest. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's the CISO needs to it's the CISO's responsibility to make sure that the board is educated and knows what they're doing from a cyber perspective. What does the ROI look like? What do the numbers look like? Excuse me. I'll give you an example. I had a conversation with a vendor a few weeks ago, and the guy said to me, "It's cybersecurity. The budgets are unlimited. As long as we show that we need the money, we'll get the money." And that's where the conversation ended, because it showed me that the guy doesn't understand the risk model and the business behind cybersecurity.
Yeah. Also, his accountant was having a coronary in the background there.
Probably. Yes, probably. But it's and that's kind of, there are CISOs that think that, hey, if I go to my board and I explain to them that I need another 100,000, I'm just going to get it. You're not going to get a blank check. If you
Mm-hmm.
go to your board and you explain to them and you empower your board to understand, no board member cares what a firewall is. No board member cares about why they need one solution over another. Your board cares over, here's how much it's going to cost us if we don't secure this. Here's how much it's going to cost us to secure this. This is where we are on that. We're at a 80% ROI. We're at 120% ROI. And if you're doing it right, you'll actually, as a CISO, get direction from the board. Again, not caring about what solution you need, but they'll say, we're kind of risk averse. We're not comfortable with risk. Our aim is to be below 120% ROI.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you could be in another organization where likely financial, likely, they're in the trading world. We're used to risk. We're very risk, accepting. We want to be at 80% because we're comfortable rolling the dice, and that's who we are as an organization. Those are messages that can only come from a board. There's no CISO in the
Mm-hmm.
world that should be making those decisions for the board.
Well, then the CISO would be, making the projections of the, the corporate mentality. It's kind of going above their pay grade. But
Correct.
that's the question is, where does the CISO sit in the C-suite? They have that title, but increasingly they're trying to get to the table versus being an established player like a CFO or a CEO.
So you're touching on conversations that I recently had. Um, I think that it doesn't matter. I think the personality of the CISO is what's gonna be the key. And if the CISO's person, you can report to the CIO and not be limited to the domain of the CIO. We're talking about, the way I look at it, we're talking about adults who are executives who know how to work. You don't need a boss to tell you you can take this day off or you can't take that day off. That's not, what we need. That's kind of when people think of report, oh, the CIO is going to tell me that I can't go after I can't work with the chief compliance officer because it's not within his realm or his domain. And
Mhm.
you for sure can. I know CISOs that have board FaceTime where they report to the CIO and the CIO doesn't get board FaceTime.
Mhm.
Doesn't even know what the board members look like. So I think it's more a personality and who you are as a person. I think the ability to speak both tech and non-tech is what is incredibly important and what lets you wear that hat. I think, unfortunately, I've also seen companies kind of promote somebody who's an engineer to be the CISO because they think security is an IT function, and the guy who was managing our Active Directory is now our CISO. Congratulations, good luck.
Mhm.
You're gonna fail, and I think knowing your own limitations is also
Mhm.
incredibly important when
Or
you get
the
into this kind of stuff.
CTO to security expectations, where there's an innovation in a technical component, but you don't necessarily have that security mindset in the same way.
And I can't tell you how much that translates, how little translates there out of experience.
Mhm. So maybe I'd like to kind of speak about some things that are going on with you. You recently increased your role with the Cloud Security Alliance. What's that about? What should we know about it?
Sure. So, Cloud Security Alliance is a really great organization where we've been working to write the best practices. I've been on the working group for Zero Trust and for Identity and Access Management (IAM). Um, just really, we've been trying to just get stuff out there. I think Zero Trust is one that's incredibly important. I think it's a somehow Zero Trust has become a buzzword instead of a methodology or a way of just a mindset of security. Everybody all of a sudden is doing Zero Trust. I saw Google doing it at RSA last year. Not sure how that goes
Yeah,
together,
we're,
but
we're going to
okay.
have to talk about the people doing Zero Trust. Do they actually know this, or is marketing taking over and that it's kind of like this mission creep without the technology really being there?
I think mission creep is a really good word. I'm used to scope creep,
Hmm.
but that is a great way of putting it. And I think that's kind of where we need to be and what we need to do. I think identifying with that marketing is pushing things. And listen, marketing has a very, very, very important job. And as customers, we need to, recognize that, because without marketing, we wouldn't know what the next solution that we need is. We wouldn't be as aware to some of the threats that are out there.
Hmm.
Um, and it really, I think marketing helps us all kind of stay on our toes. That being said, I think, if you were at RSA last year, or even now I'm at Black Hat, Zero Trust was everywhere. Every single sign said Zero Trust. And then just back to Cloud Security Alliance, I'm now co-chairing and helping to chair the identity and access management part, where we're diligently trying to write the standards and best practices around that.
So what's involved in the processes of establishing best practices? It's nice to think that you have the ideal, but what goes into it on a technical level, and how do you implement it?
So so on the writing side of things, it's not as easy as people think. There are a lot of long calls, usually in the evening slash at night, where we'll get together and talk about, how do we do this, or what's the best way to do that. We'll kind of challenge ourselves. We'll talk about different organizations and how we're doing different things and what we should be doing and things like that, and what way we all see. We'll often talk about kind of latest technology, what's coming into the industry, and how that can affect what we're doing. And when it comes to implementing, I mean, just like any other, treat it as a project. Hey, how are we doing it today? Let's assess, evaluate what you're doing today, put together a project plan, get a project manager involved, make sure that you're tracking costs and hours and all of that fun stuff, because while you're improving your best practices, you're likely offsetting your risk, and those are numbers that you should be tracking and being able to present.
Mhm. So, as it is, 'tis the season. The new year has just turned. We're about to get blindsided with every single list and prediction you could possibly have. I don't care about everybody else's. I want to hear your predictions. What do you think are going to be the biggest market trends? Yeah, everybody else, they're not on the other side of
I'm
it.
just laughing because I've seen them around. They're definitely starting. It's definitely the season for the 2023 predictions.
As a marketing guy, I can't tell you, like, from the December where you're like, I could write this and it's gonna die, versus January where I'm gonna put it out there and it doesn't matter. Everybody thinks that they're gonna jump into it as, like, it's not about making it poppy. It's about being able to give actionable advice that people can turn to and then do something with. So I wanna kind of hear what's something practical that we should know about the coming threats this year.
So I'm not looking at this year as the year of
Mhm.
threats. I said last year was going to be the year of supply chain security and looking at how to secure your supply chain. I think this year, with everything that's going on in the market, is going to be the year of consolidation. And what I mean by that is you're going to see a lot of CISOs out there look at their budget and look at what they're trying to accomplish and say, I can buy all of these different solutions from 150 different vendor because this one secures the little piece here and this one secures the little piece there. Whereas I can go to a larger vendor who does 80% of what I need. It'll cost me 75% of what I'm paying now. So there's cost savings there. And I'll present it to the board. It's a better solution. I have one throat to choke. I think this year is going to be the year of unfortunately, a lot of the small vendors who might have really great ideas and some really great tech,
Mhm.
not necessarily disappear, but I think they're going to be swallowed into some of the giants, one way or another, either
Mhm.
bought out or just they're gonna, it's gonna be a fire sale. Um, but I think a lot of CISOs are going to be looking at how do I increase the business I'm doing with one of the vendors and consolidate into less. That also means that now they have less overhead to manage as many solutions and less to do. So I think this is the year where the trimming is going to happen, if that makes sense. Not necessarily from layoffs, though. We saw what happened at Salesforce and what's going to continue to probably happen in our industry and every industry
Mhm.
really. I would love to say that cybersecurity was safe and we're not. We're
Yeah,
just
maybe you should check out the Israeli cyber vendors. We're having some issues these days.
Yep. No, I've been following. But that's my point really is I think the larger vendors are going to grow a little bit, and I think the smaller
Mhm.
vendors are just going to end up suffering and be kind of bought up or scooped up by the
Yeah.
other ones.
Just as an aside, do you think that that's going to impact innovation and innovative solutions in the years to come? Because in 2, 3 years from now, there's not going to be that startup pipeline. People are going to have to kind of start up from the beginning again.
So I think people are going to have to start up from the beginning again, but I think people every year you hear of a new vendor that's out there that's doing something new. So I don't think it's going to impact us for many years to come, but I do think this year is going to be the year of less innovation and more, the people who are innovating the code and the product, instead of doing that, they're gonna, how do I tie our product into the company that just bought us so that it's part of the bigger solution.
Hmm.
And I think that's where the resources are going to go this year, and hopefully just this year, but maybe I'm hopeful that next year and I think in years to come we're definitely going to still see evolution. I mean, we're in a field that things change every day. The aspects and how things are, how attacks are happening and all that stuff changes almost every day. That being said, I have been seeing a lot of kind of old attacks, come back. DDoS is gaining some space again, and I saw, what was the other one? Where people are faking websites and pretending to be vendors and things like that. That's stuff I haven't seen in years. So that's all starting to come back as well.
Yeah, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think people sometimes think you need this new technology, this new solution. It's like people haven't patched up from last time. You don't really have to be as creative. Don't worry.
Very true. Unfortunate, but true.
Yeah, Alon. So where can we find you online? Hear more about you? See your speaking and writing opportunities. Where can we see more of you?
So I think LinkedIn would probably be the best place to look me up. Alon Nachmany. So LinkedIn.com/IAN Alon Nachmany, or just search for me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. So thank you so much for having us. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us for another casual conversation with Cyfluencer, the cybersecurity thought leadership platform, hosting another session of the innovative thought leaders guiding the cybersecurity community. So thank you so much, Alon, for joining us. And
Thank
we
you.
look forward to talking to you soon. Feel good, everybody.
Excellent.